Anyway, so who are you guys?
I'm Ed Triou. I'm a test architect for SQL Server, and this is Andre Milbradt.
Okay.
Taking a lead for SQL Server team.
Oh, great.
So I actually use data side. I'm on the XML side.
Wow.
Both data and XML, we're in a team called Web Data within SQL Server. We do all client-side data access, whether it's XML, relational, objects. Pretty exciting. We've been here for quite a while. As far as what we're talking about today is Aruba. We determined a few years ago that our team is spending a significant amount of time verifying lab run results.
Okay.
In fact, when we went around and talked to most of them, they spent from anywhere from 1 to 2 days per week, every week, verifying results. We're somewhat of a unique team because we have a lot of lab runs that we have to do. We've got a lot of sign-offs. We ship with a lot of deliverables, Windows, VS, SQL Server. So it does introduce a lot of lab runs. We're somewhat unique, and we've got a fairly large matrix, but it's really not that unique of a problem to just us. Most teams around Microsoft are finally realizing that the support level of 10 years and the number of versions they have to support and the combinations and all the flavors, it's really taking away from writing new tests and verifying new features. Just the backlog of verifying the old stuff. So to tackle that problem, we needed some way, instead of the previous approach was we would do the lab run. The results would get rolled up, so we would have pass rates, we'd have failure rates. The testers would kind of look at those, like if my test is still within a 95%, 96% pass rate,
Right.
seems good. But that little delta would be missing bugs. It could be 94.5 today, and it could be 95 tomorrow. But it could be a different set of issues that are causing that remaining 5%.
Okay.
So what testers would generally do is they kind of skim through logs. They kind of, they come very comfortable with their area. Yeah, this looks familiar. I think I've seen this before. Log things that look different. But when you multiply that with a matrix, the number of log files that you have to review is fairly large. So the chances of missing stuff, the quality bar goes down substantially. So it's not to say that we didn't have automated ways to do some of that comparisons. They just didn't do it at the level that was really required. So we came up with Aruba, and Aruba is basically on every single client machine as part of a lab run. It gets run, the results get verified, compared automatically, and rolled up to a database. And they get checked against whatever you establish that I expect the failure to be for this particular test.
Right.
So unless that fails exactly for the same way, you'll get flagged that you need to review it. So now, instead of coming in the morning where you have 10,000 log files that need to be reviewed, you come in and the Aruba presents to you, and you've got 50 things you have to look at. Now, those 50 things could be spread out across any of these log files, but there's only 50 things you have to look at. It tracks those 50 things. You need to itemize how you investigated each of those 50 things, and the leads now can actually have visibility into, hey, did you get through all of your 50 things, as opposed to, yes, I verified the lab run, I'm done, piece of mail gets sent out, go ahead. But there's a real, there's a huge trust factor in there, and a lot of times, as we found out when we interviewed most of the testers within our work, they didn't get through all the results. It was more, my gut feel is everything seems to be fine, and if the rest of the log files I didn't get to, have similar results that I have got through, I'm fairly comfortable with that, but it really wasn't a deterministic way of doing it.
Right.
So that's basically Aruba in a nutshell. And we're at a point now where it's become absolutely fundamental for our team. We could not live without it. We actually did a patent for it, just so not to get the cue, but more, we can't have somebody else take this technology away from us or have to pay revenue just to be able to use this technology. And then we're at a point now where it's hard for us to believe that how are other teams surviving without something like this. And so now we're kind of in the mode of trying to help other teams, trying to do a test day talk on it, get other people involved. And some people have actually done some work in this area. It's just not widely known.
Where will customers see Aruba? Is this something just internally, or is
Currently it's a SQL Server test tool that's part of our system.
Okay.
We're trying to get other teams such as WinFS, trying to get Office. We've talked to the WTT guys, which pretty much most of the Windows testers are using their framework. We're trying to get other teams slowly involved, and it's not necessarily an Aruba thing. It's not necessarily that we would like one size fits all. All of Microsoft needs to be in one verification. It's more the fact that we learned some things over the last few years that have greatly saved us a lot of time and saved us quality issues. And even if you weren't to take Aruba, or if we couldn't get Aruba over your harness or whatever it is, just the concepts and some of the, even some of the low-level components, leveraging those, or just leveraging the ideas. For example, DevDiv, the developer division, their harness Mad Dog, they've actually started a similar technique, and we're working with them as part of this testing presentation to kind of go over. It's not really about either one of those tools. It's just about, hey, here's a common problem space. There's a common set of needs that most teams need. Here's an example what SQL Server did. Here's an example what DevDiv did. Neither one of those you can just kind of out of the box take it for any and leverage it for any team. But it's more if we can get people that are interested together, bring them together, show them what we've done, get their ideas.
Now you mentioned Test Day. What is that?
Test Day it's a new thing. It's kind of similar to, for those that are familiar with the Research Tech Fest, where they bring a lot of the things that the research team is working on. It's kind of nice because a lot of other people around the company get to see technologies they could leverage today that they didn't realize existed. And it's the same thing with Test Day. It's a little bit more than just.
It's for employees only, right?
It's full-time engineers.
Okay.
It's more bring all these testers together. A lot of them. We don't have a really good mechanism of sharing data between testers in different groups, and we have some toolboxes, and we have some very little. But it's just a way to put everybody in a room, show them some presentations what other teams are doing, give them an exhibition center of all the demos that are going on. They can just wander and see tools. They might walk away with, hey, there's this tool that exists. We might research it and see if it would work for us.
Right.
I think the big point really is collaboration. Kind of Eddie touched on it early on. And that's something that makes me quite a bit, kind of looking at the different tools and kind of seeing which share technologies or adopt technologies. There's not a lot of collaboration going on at Microsoft, which surprised quite a bit. We did Aruba about 2.5, 3 years ago. There's nothing similar going on, and even in terms of automation systems, even so they're now the big three, there's not really too much communication going on in between the teams. So I think one of really the core ideas is to get something like an MS Microsoft-wide test community going at Microsoft Test Day, and really develop solutions together and kind of share experiences and build better tools.
Right. So will customers get Aruba in the next version of SQL Server, or?
Aruba is primarily just an internal test tool.
Okay.
We actually haven't exposed it externally other than the patent.
Okay.
We are still working on getting the entire building using some part of the technology. It doesn't ship with the server.
Right.
It's primarily just an internal tool, but we're hoping to have other testers around Microsoft either leverage the tool for their backend or leverage at least the concept so we can work together and collaborate on this.
Right.
It's quite independent from SQL servers. It's solving different problems. But something that also happens with Microsoft is that they actually think about developing something like a test suite like Burton. There's effort going on. And I could see that they also, something like Aruba, maybe not Aruba itself, but that they would use concept or methods developed for Aruba for Burton and then ship it out to the customer.
Right. And let's see. How is this changing SQL Server? I mean, are we? Tell me about some of the advantages that SQL Server team's seeing because of
so this is a
the automated work that you get.
This is a question we get quite a bit because we've actually spent quite a bit of time getting the team moved over. When we first interviewed the teams, there was about 5 different approaches on how they verify the results. Just getting our own team, which consists of probably about 8 sub-teams, unified on one approach was surprisingly interesting. But now that they're there, the benefits of Aruba are simply they come in the morning, we have an astounding number of lab runs. They can come in and they just see the differences. Now, I think you're kind of getting at how much time is this saving. When we did it initially, we found 1 to 2 days were spent on verification, and we've kind of taken another sampling, and we're still finding 1 to 2 days were spent on verification. And so it's, well, we thought Aruba would save us this time. How come it's not saving the time? And the fact of the matter is, it actually is saving the time, but now we're actually verifying the results completely. Whereas before, 2 days was spent, and a lot of it, a good portion of that 2 days was spent on the mundane stuff of just getting through the logs, trying to understand what is different, before you even spend any time on investigation, and half the time you can get through all of that, just the mundane stuff. Now Aruba does all of that work for you, and you spend 1 or 2 of that days actually investigating why is the product failing differently than it was before? Why is it failing now? And you're kind of working through those. So even though it's kind of a good thing, but the biggest problem we have with some of our test leads and stuff is I thought we would get this 2 days back. I thought Aruba would just instantly we do runs. Aruba would automatically verify. bugs would get in, or we move on. We don't have to touch it, and it's saving us time. It's saving us a lot of time. In fact, we're able to do more runs than what we were able to do a couple years ago. I mean, we actually couldn't do as many runs as we wanted to a couple years ago. So we just couldn't get the testers through it. Now we can actually do more runs because it's automatically verified, and the only thing we need to investigate is the differences, which we're now focusing on.
Interesting.
The other thing that Ed touched on is kind of we're still spending the same time on verifying test results, but some of this time is also spent on supplying more metadata. So now the tester has a failure. He says this is a test bug, this is a product bug. This is kind of failing because of this product bug. It's associated with product studio data. Also giving comments, blah blah blah. It failed over and over again, or that kind of stuff. And we're getting much richer data than we had before. So we can have got data mining capabilities on top of these standardized reports, standardized metrics, which give a very crisp insight on how we're actually doing. Kind of one sample is kind of we kind of usually a lot of stuff kind of when you test products they range around test pass rates, and there always was a certain amount of noise in test pass rates. It was kind of running at maybe 95%. But you didn't quite know what was the last 5%. With Aruba, we can actually now calculate something. It's kind of a new term that we call it ship rate, because we pull out all the noise, and you really just have the pass rate kind of that truly describes how the product is doing. It's something that we couldn't do before Aruba.
Interesting. So you have a demo of it?
Yeah, I can show you a demo.
Cool. Can you go and change to 60 hertz? So we're back here. Cool. So what are we seeing here?
The interesting thing about Aruba is, so this is the UI. This is a managed WinForms application. The left-hand side, these are different backends, different where your data is stored, for example. These are different systems. So this is kind of an old school pupil type system. This is the Office Oasis system. One of the key features about Aruba was that we didn't want to tie it to a particular harness.
Right.
So we want to be able to have this UI, all the features of the UI, operate technically over any type of automation data. It could be stored in WTT, it could be Oasis, it could be Mad Dog. So each one of these nodes kind of represents a different data store. And if I expand this node, this is the Oasis data store. This is our actual lab runs for web data. When I expand that, I'll see all the projects within the database. For example, here's MDAC, here's NDP, this is CLR, the managed stack, this is SNAC, SQL XML, all the different projects within web data.
Yep.
If I were to expand MVP, then I'll see what's going on within this particular project's lab runs. I can click on active lab runs. And then over on the right-hand side, it will show me all those active lab runs, and it will show me, most importantly, which ones I need to verify and when I need to verify them by. So for example, this particular lab run, this managed VVT, I'll click on it. We'll drill into that, and I'll see all the tasks that ran as part of that lab run. Now I can expand the run and drill into particular teams that were part of that run. I can drill into, let's say, the XML team. I'll drill into this tester. And on the right-hand side, we'll show all of his particular tasks. In this case, he doesn't really have anything to investigate, although he's got a few problem suites where nothing actually ran. This is one part where if I would have had a little bit more time, I could have gave you a run. Let's see if we can find a run that has things to investigate. So here's an example. I'll drill into this short lab run. Let's find a particular tester in XML. Here's her test that ran, and she has, out of all the tests that ran, she has one investigate. She would drill into that, and she would immediately see what's different about this investigate, this particular failure. She would start to investigate this. She could pull up the log. She could see the history of the lab runs on all the other lab runs that it failed on, or all the other configurations that it failed on.
So did you two build this tool?
Yes, about 3 years ago we developed this tool. That was kind of the project we took. So there were other people who attempted that before. So we thought rather than abandoning their approach, we recruited these people to join us for the development team, because they actually in niches they had good approaches. So and also it was a political thing. So we really want to get these people on board because they felt strong about it before. So about 2.5, 3 years ago we developed Aruba. It took us about half a year to develop the system. We spent a lot of time just designing the system, really talking to the people and getting the ideas. So talking to the testers to have an idea what it's important for them, kind of what do they want in the tool.
Right.
And we put it into production about 2 years ago. And then, as Ed said, we couldn't imagine living without it since then.
And you guys wrote this in .NET?
Yes, yes. There's several components. So there's a SQL Server backend where we store all failure information, also all the relations to failure, when it happened, in which lab run, kind of all the metadata and so forth. And then we have our driver piece, which runs on a test client. After the test is done, we just pass out all the information, upload failure data to Aruba to a SQL store procedure, and then we do all the analysis there, and then it's uploaded to the database. And what you see here, this is actually the WinForms client is built on .NET. And it's just basically just querying the database. It's querying the automation database as well as the Aruba database to extract fail information.
So how do you like working in .NET?
Very, very much. I know this is going live, but for me, going from C++ to .NET, it was kind of like a relief. That was the first time that I really could focus on solving business problems rather than kind of solving problems within the language.
Memory management problems.
Memory management, yeah, allocating and freeing memory.
Yeah.
It really was. I think it's kind of like I think about 4 times more productive just using .NET. Really think about the core problems.
Yeah. Cool. Any other cool things in the app?
So this is, I don't know if you can see that, but this is kind of an example of this particular tester and all of his tasks. And you'll see a lot of those tasks are quite a bit below 100%.
Yeah.
But he has very few items to actually investigate, and that's kind of the core power of Aruba, is it truly goes through, only shows you exactly what you need to focus on. If I were to drill into one of those, this is pulling up Product Studio bug data. But you can see, here's a good example. So he sees his particular failure, and this is one of the big powers of Aruba, is that this failure could have happened on numerous other configurations. If I click on configs, you'll see there's probably about 50 other configurations as part of that lab run that this failed on exactly the same reason.
Right.
So instead of investigating it on Windows 95 and NT4 and Windows 2000 and all the other platforms and languages, he literally investigates this one time as a unique failure, and all those other platforms he doesn't even have to touch. So this alone is probably the key feature of Aruba, where if teams only had one thing they had to test against, they probably could actually manage reviewing it themselves. But as soon as you start to get a matrix and you start to get versions of previous that you have to support, it just becomes unmanageable, and you really need a tool that kind of just collapses all of that down to what's truly unique, what's truly different.
Right. It's really neat stuff.
So that's kind of the tester's view. They kind of come in here, they view what's different from me. However, the interesting thing is that Aruba becomes the front end for the tester. So they're not using the automation harnesses anymore. They're not using all the automation UIs, because truly, they don't necessarily need to create the lab run. They don't need to do a lot of those features that are in there. It's truly just show me what's different. Let me investigate that.
Yeah.
So we also built into Aruba UI, not just cater to the tester, but also cater to kind of the process or the team structure.
Right.
So the teams are shown in here, and this tester, when he's all done verifying his results, let's say for this particular node, he would come over here and click on, he's ready to submit a handshake, and he'll get his overall exit criteria for his areas and everything that's been defined rolled up on how he's meeting the criteria, and he can actually give, he's already given reasons why those individual failures are failing, and he can give additional, high-level comments about the run. And then once he signs off, once he actually puts in comments and submits his handshake, he'll get a check mark next to his name in this list. And then all the leads, instead of sending mail like, hey, are you done? Are you done? Tell me your results. All of this lead just instantly sees everybody with check marks next to the name. They can see all the comments for their team at the high level. They can drill in the individual failures if they want. And this just gets bubbled up, and then eventually a test manager will see, hey, all my leads are signed off. We're ready to go. I sign off in a lab run, and we're done. And it just kind of, it's more than just kind of helping the tester, but it's kind of a lead management, a test manager tool. And then additionally, the test manager can actually come in and say, okay, for this particular team, I can see the handshake, but let's say I'm interested in high-level data, like, what are the number of bugs that were found for this particular lab run? What's preventing our quality? You can click on the bugs tab for any individual team. Wait for that to come up. And it will pull all the bugs that are affecting this lab run that had failures that were associated with those bugs, and you can see exactly the impact of each one of those bugs. So for example, a test manager could come in and say, these are the top 10 bugs that are affecting my team. Right-click, send email to the dev team and say, look, if you fix these 10 bugs, you just addressed over 1,000 failures within the run.
Yeah.
So it's kind of all three different levels. It's primarily focused towards the tester. That's truly what we're trying to cater toward, but it also does have some lead and management type things, reports and summaries and things.
So it probably is making ship schedules a little bit more accurate, I would guess.
At least ensure the quality more. So we define the criteria for the ship schedule, for the milestone. We put those in here, we call those release criteria. and then when the tester does a handshake, all of his results are compared against that release criteria, so you can easily see, as opposed to just saying, yeah, my pass rates look good. It's more than that. It's what have we defined as the criteria for this release, and he can see how he compares to that, and he can give reasons why he's not meeting that criteria. And the nice thing about it is in addition to just having the criteria, it actually is the forcing function of you've truly, I can tell when you sign off on the run, how many remaining things haven't you got to? Out of all the ones that you have got to, how are they categorized? Are they product issues? Are they test issues? Are they lab issues? And I have that history data where I can, in fact, one of the biggest problems we're facing right now is one of the reasons why we're still at that 2 days a week of verifying results is that a good portion of the failures, if I were to click on this tab, show me, we call false failures. False failures are failures that are because of your own fault, because of test issues, because of lab issues, frailness in the test. And we're starting to find that out of everything the tester investigates, probably 70 to 80% of all those failures that they end up investigating are their own test. So literally a huge portion of that 2 days is spent investigating their own stuff. And so that's what, now that we never actually kind of realized that prior to having this data, but now that we have this data, we actually have a problem we can go solve, where it was just an unknown black hole before.
Why did you choose .NET? Why couldn't you have done this in a web browser?
It's an interesting question. Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, it kind of, we actually did a couple of systems before, and the problem that we have with applications that in terms of productivity, they just can't go where WinForms applications go. And Ed touched on it early on. This component or this UI is really kind of an end-to-end solution for the tester. So he's going to spend a lot of time in there. So in order to give them a really rich experience, we thought there's no other way rather than using WinForms to get the speed and the performance actually to really give the tester the rich experience.
Right. And you can certainly see that as you're clicking around on tabs and moving around and dragging things.
Yeah, it's not that the web necessarily wouldn't, not that we couldn't do the same type of rich feature within the web. It's just the amount of time to do that. And also, the web is great for the case where I'm completely disconnected. I just want to go in and browse the results or get a report or something. But Aruba is, when you're spending 1 or 2 days completely in there, you really want something. You're not just getting in and getting out. You're just staying in an app. You want it as rich, as fast, as few refreshes, saving state, and all that kind of stuff. And this is the best way we could do it. And I mean, to go back to your initial, how do you like .NET? I was fairly skeptical. I was a fairly hardcore C++ developer, but as kind of C# was kind of the for dummies kind of. But it really is. I used to just live in the debugger. I mean, I write code and I just kind of live in there, in the actual environment, just debugging it. And with .NET, seriously speaking, I've spent very few times actually in the debugger at all.
Right.
It's more of just focusing on what you want to expose as opposed to debugging everything you write.
Right. Now you're on the SQL Server team, and the .NET CLR is being put into SQL Server.
Yep.
Can you tell us what you think of that?
It has pros and cons. So there's a hardcore falling for relational developers that love T-SQL, that just love to write queries in raw SQL and get all the power of the query processor. And then there's a new set of people that they want to do additional things within the server besides just query data. They want to be able to do manipulations and algorithms and stuff like that. And the .NET kind of just opens up that field where before they would have to shell out to either extended store procs or COM objects or something. And the .NET kind of allows you. And the other, to be honest, as you slowly kind of feel more comfortable with writing managed code inside the server, I'm all for writing hardcore SQL. I'm a very hardcore SQL guy, except I have spent hours debugging pages of T-SQL, looking for, trying to find that very subtle bug that's causing my results to be wrong. And managed, to be honest, you spend a lot less time debugging. So even though it may not perform as well as the T-SQL currently, I think eventually that very well could be the efficient way to write database access.
Interesting. Straight from the heart of the SQL Server team here. You guys know the truth because you're the testers. The marketers will tell you whatever, but the testers all know whether the product is good or not.
Currently today there's pros and cons. For the majority of work, it's going to be T-SQL. We're just kind of getting into getting the CLR integrated, and it's just kind of the first release with that in there. But I think eventually, at least from what we've seen and from our experience, I think eventually this very well could be a very fundamental way to write store procedures in the future, or way to extend the server's behavior to include other things that you want to write.
It's going to be a fun year. So, SQL Server is coming out when?
we hope, towards the end of the year.
Towards the end of the year. Awesome. That'd probably PR all go, what are you doing talking about dates again? You guys set some expectations. Well, good luck in the year, and hopefully this helps us meet those dates, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, cool, thanks.
Thank you.